Avalara proudly sponsors this podcast series about accountants by accountants and featuring some of the best thought leaders in the industry. Thank you to our sponsor, Avalara. Avalara's award-winning tax automation solutions help accounting practitioners and businesses of all sizes simplify sales tax compliance with real-time rates, automated returns filing, and more. Learn more at avalara.com. Hey everyone, this is Laurelyn, and you're listening to the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly Accounting Podcast. More accountants than ever are experimenting and shaping our profession in new and interesting ways. On this show, I sit down with these rock stars to discuss the ideas, the opportunities, the struggles, and the strategies that they're taking advantage of so the rest of us can do the same. Accountants can earn free CPE credit from listening to this podcast. Just download the Earmark CPE app in the App Store or visit earmarkcpe.com. Welcome to another episode of the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly Accounting Podcast. I am your host, Laurelyn Wilson. In today's episode, which I have not titled yet, but the working title I want to say is, I'm not like other accountants, I'm a cool accountant. But what we're talking about is how to stay relevant and current in our industry. And so today's guest we have is Annette Nellen. Now, Annette has so many letters after her name, like the entire alphabet, but she's a CPA, she's a JD, she's an MBA. Her current position is as a professor and director of San Jose State University's graduate tax program, where she teaches a wide variety of tax classes. She's also active in tax sections of the AICPA, including being a former chair of the Tax Executive Committee. She's also involved in the ABA and has been in the California Lawyers Association. This was interesting to me. This I highlighted and pulled out. In 2021, she served on the AICPA NASBA CPA Evolution Education Advisory Group as co-chair of the Tax Compliance and Planning Model Curriculum Task Force. I want to find out a little more about that once you tell us a little more, but it's great to have you. So can you tell us kind of overall where you started and how you got here?
All right. Well, thank you for having me here. So I have been at San Jose State University teaching full-time in tax courses. I teach in the College of Business, and I currently direct the graduate tax program. I actually was in practice 10 years prior to that, including in Fortune 500 company, actually working as a junior accountant right out of college, 5 years at the IRS, including I taught for them for a year, but I was a revenue agent out auditing small businesses, individuals. And then I was 3 years at a big four firm. And along the way, I did a fair amount of teaching, and that's eventually what I got myself into. And along the way, picked up, as you noted, a few degrees. When I was working at the IRS, I was going to law school at night. Working on that. So all very helpful things that have been very helpful to my career and appreciation of challenges students face and just getting everything done and working. For example, school, at least private university, was expensive a long time ago, and I know it's even more expensive now, and that's obviously always a challenge for students to accommodate all that.
Yeah. When you first, went in, picked your major and stuff, did you have kind of a clear vision of what you wanted to do, or was it kind of more meandering?
Probably more meandering, which is good. You think about, you ask a young kid, what do you want to do when they grow up? They usually say something that they've seen, a teacher, a fireman, a police officer or something. But then, at the university at San Jose State, we've got over 130 majors. How would anybody have a clue as to all of that? So you really, to think somebody knew they wanted to be, some specialization in the College of Business or something, they really wouldn't know. And then I think people should also be careful about looking at some of these career guides. I think for accountants, they still say today, just like they did 40, 50 years ago, hey, if you're good at math, become an accountant. It is far more than that. I mean, you have to have incredible critical thinking skills, great communication skills, a willingness to just keep on learning, which is also, it ties me to this topic here of, staying relevant and current and stepping out of your comfort zone to do that.
Yeah.
Accountants, they got to do so many things. It's far more than just math. And, there are even more sophisticated machines today than there were 40 or 50 years ago to do a lot of that
Right.
math.
It's like, yeah, whenever I tell someone I'm an accountant, they're like, "Oh, you must be good at math." I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 no. We have Excel for that." I said, "What I can do is understand numbers in their context. I can look at a number and know, does that number make sense based on what I understand in the bigger story?" And I think probably my biggest shock when I finally learned how to do accounting was just like how much gray there is. Like, you think you're going in, it's going to be a lot of black and white, and it's way more nebulous, which is, I think, a good, especially if you lean more on the creative side. Like you can really tap into that part of your brain and be very successful in this industry.
Right, and something also helping business clients with understanding their business and how to grow their business,
Yes.
and a lot
Hmm.
of the you mentioned the gray, a lot of it's coming about through transactions that maybe didn't exist when the guidance was the
Oh,
FASB or
yes.
the tax guidance was written.
Yes, we'll touch on that later, touch on crypto later.
Okay.
So, tell me very briefly. So, I want to go back into serving on the AI CPA NASBA CPA Evolution Education Advisory Group. So, what did that entail doing?
Well, we talk about things continue to evolve. I mean, the CPA
Hmm.
exam has changed a lot over the decades, and one change that's coming up in 2024 is a really significant one where people taking the exam will take a core exam and then they
Hmm.
select one of three disciplines, accounting, tax, or technology, and they want to make sure that we're reflecting that the profession has changed a bit. Technologies plays a bigger role than it did decades ago, and to get this fully rolled out, obviously universities asked the question, well, what might be different that we should consider in our curriculum?
Hmm.
So I was involved through my work with the AICPA, asked to get involved in helping to draft the learning objectives to consider for, you know, addressing them. Not that
Yeah.
we've never said that university should teach to the exam. That's not the point, but just to
Hmm.
be a better familiar with what should be tested on that tax discipline. So I was serving, and it was a small group of practitioners and academics coming together. But we started actually with the existing CPA exam blueprints, which, if no one's looked at that in a while, because maybe you took the exam a while ago, or you're a
Yep.
student, you should take a look at it. There is so much already on the exam, but this is
Yeah.
going to, this change will tailor, a little greater focus on tax, including from
Hmm.
planning aspects of
Oh, that's
taxation.
great. Yeah, I mean, so when I took the CPA exam, it was 4 or 5 years ago now, and it was the 4 parts. And the first part I took was the reg, because I had already been practicing in tax for several years. Because I'm like, okay, this one I can knock out of the park, and I did. But even so, like, I mean, I remember studying for stuff like I was like, I'm never gonna ever need to know this ever. So I mean, I know that's a frustration that people talk about, and it sounds like you guys are addressing it, is creating an exam that fits the industry today and not one that fits one that was around 40 or 50 years ago.
Right, and there's always been changes going on. I think prior to this change coming of 2024, a notable change was to say, we have to be higher in what's called Bloom's taxonomy, less memorization type questions and more
Mm, mhm.
application and, you know, showing you really understand something and can use
Yeah.
that knowledge. That's very important because, certainly CPAs for a long time haven't just been sitting around adding up numbers. They have a lot of things to really understand so far as just business practices,
Yes.
and the a more multi-jurisdictional activity going on that obviously raises tax and other
Mhm.
challenges as well.
I'm gonna like have maybe a little bit of a hot take here, but I feel traditionally or historically, accountants or at least firm owners haven't needed to be that savvy at business because the margins are in our industry are so good. So I think because of that, it does not always translate well into them being an advisor for another business. What are your thoughts on that? On that
Well,
very hot take?
I certainly encourage our students to be that trusted business advisor
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
knowledgeable in tax, because they really understand even how the tax application works. They need to make sure they fully understand all the details of the transaction, so far as
Hmm.
who all was involved. Are they related anyway?
Yeah.
Where did this transaction take place? When did it take place? What exactly did occur there?
Hmm.
And the better business acumen they have, the far better they're going to do. And something that's really been continually emerging in the last probably 10 years is called data analytics. You even see master's
Hmm.
programs for accounting and data analytics. But the data analytics is just really recognizing that we have so much digital data out there that you
Yep.
can do things with it. Like
Yes.
when the internet started, we were web 1.0, where you basically just took data and just put it there, right? It's just,
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm not reading a piece of paper, I'm reading it on the web. Web 2.0, well, no, you can do all this interaction with it. So that's really what I think data analytics derive from. And then, well, what can we do with this data, either so far as better understanding our business operations, maybe streamlining some of the things that we've been doing, or processes we were doing maybe by hand could
Hmm.
be streamlined in some way. But you really need to have an understanding of the business to understand, where is the data? Oh, where should there be some data? And then what can we do with this to really help the owners and operators better understand that, where we can maybe improve our tax compliance and planning by getting some of that data. So, yeah, I think practitioners, so they do have to have a strong business understanding. And today, that's not just a business practice, but a lot of times
Hmm.
understanding technology that's being used.
Yes. Avalara helps businesses of all sizes get indirect tax compliance right. Their sales tax solutions help you manage sales and use tax complexities while lessening risk for your business and clients. Whether you're a small business or a global enterprise, Avalara can help you deliver tax compliance services confidently and efficiently. Over 30,000 organizations across the globe use Avalara's cloud-based compliance solutions to solve transaction tax compliance needs, including sales and use, VAT, and other direct and indirect taxes. Okay, so in one of your presentations, you touch on how we're in the fourth industrial revolution, and I feel like this is probably very relevant to all this. So can you tell the audience what that means?
Well, the fourth industrial revolution, saying we got a first, second, third, and fourth, but the fourth one is really described as just a very rapid pace of changes in technology. And that's been, actually, I think just going on, but really has hit quite a rapid pace. I mean, thinking about even in the cryptocurrency, so far as decentralized finance type transactions and the evolution, whatever was happening yesterday, something different and maybe a major difference happening today. And it's just very rapid pace on that.
Hmm.
And how to keep up with that. It's also caused some type of work to be done by even artificial intelligence, or
Hmm.
robotics, process automation, other technologies. And we need to have a different skill set, more understanding of technology, stronger critical thinking, stronger communication skills. We can get all the information effective that we need and communicate that to whoever it needs to be done. But it's really just fourth industrial, this very rapid pace of how technology continues to evolve. You also hear the term, disruptive technologies. Something is being done different. I mean, today, like in financial planning, there are artificial intelligence programs that can just gather all this data and say, well, this is where you should, this is the mix that you should have in your portfolio, and adjust it on a very rapid basis. So far as, think about these platform companies where they're using technology to be able to match, somebody's got services to provide and somebody can provide those, and to match
Hmm.
them
Yep.
and process the payments, process everything. And while, today those are primarily run by, there's a third party involved there, right? The platform owner. The technology does exist that those could be actually run in a decentralized environment, just like most virtual currencies are run in a decentralized environment through the blockchain. That's major change when you think about that. So many things could run in a decentralized environment, and also the use of smart contracts, where, hey, if this happens, this will automatically occur.
Mhm.
different ways that people will be investing in assets, various kinds of tokens being used. There's just a lot going on. And even I mentioned like the blockchain, this really even is something that needs to be added. Any programs probably have done this. Like if you're helping your accounting students learn about how do they do auditing, well, how do they audit when certain records are being kept on the blockchain, which already has, it's immutable, things are can't be changed later on. But how do you know that it's working the way it does? I mean, it's just audit practices will have to evolve to be able to address, okay, companies keeping some records on the blockchain. How do we go about verifying that? And when should we be doing it? When they're setting it up, when it's operating? So
Yeah.
that's just one reason why, we just really need to be making sure we're doing what we can to stay current, staying relevant. Because also, as these technologies evolve, well, there's all kinds of new businesses coming about, and those new
Yeah.
businesses need tax and accounting advisors, right? They need CPAs and attorneys to help them. How you're going to find these folks if
Yes.
you're not out there wherever they are? And I know
Yes.
we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah. Do you feel like our industry does not lend ourselves to that model very well?
That's a good question. I think certainly if you've got I have so many clients already, I can't even keep up with it.
Mhm.
That can be good and bad
Yeah.
because it could be that whatever your clients might be doing, maybe their businesses are getting acquired by somebody with the more advanced technology that wants client's client base. But are you going to be able to really help this acquirer if they're using technology that you don't even, you can't even have a conversation with them because they're
Yeah.
thinking you don't know what I'm talking about. So I mean that's one reason to watch out for that. I think if you need to be hiring folks, people out of college might be, very interested in, I want to learn more about how the blockchain works and decentralized finance and all that. And you're like, well, we aren't involved in any of that. Or, there's also the risk that you've got clients that, and I can remember probably back in 2012, even asking groups of practitioners that I'd be doing presentations to you, how many of you have a client that has virtual currency? And maybe like one hand would go up. And I would
Yeah.
say, no, you probably all have at least one client with virtual currency. But if they don't know anything about virtual currency, they're not asking, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so unless the client volunteers that, so there just really is a need to be keeping up. And yeah, I guess in any profession we can get kind of complacent, and that's why I want to make sure my students aren't doing that. I want to make sure they're well prepared for not just understanding all the tax technical rules and the policy behind it, but that they can really see how all of that can fit into a very rewarding career that they shape and
Mhm.
continues to evolve, because I can't tell them today what kind of technology they're going to be using 10 years from now, but they need to
Yeah.
be able to have that as part of their lifelong learning process. That lifelong learning means, yeah, you're going to need to get out of your comfort zone and go experience and learn about these other things, because at the rapid pace things continue to change, especially technology and business practice wise. You just have to find some efficient way for keeping up, or you're going to find that your client base shrinks, your available pool of people you want to hire might be smaller than
Mhm.
otherwise, and that your clients are going to evolve into these new spaces where there's new opportunities and old ones have gone away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what the industry in general is feeling right now, kind of the pressure, the stress, is you have both the technological side, going out of control, moving at the speed of light, and then we have the technical side doing that as well. Like tax law has been changing nonstop. Like I remember, especially during the beginning of the pandemic, I had a newsletter going out every single day to my clients, trying to keep them apprised of all the changes to the like EIDL and the PPP and then the ERC. Like, how, like, do you think that because of that, like, that's really number one, causing a lot of stress, and two, driving people into earlier retirement who would traditionally stay in the industry longer?
Um, it is certainly frustrating when you see very rapid changes in the tax law, particularly when they're effective like right away. In fact, it was You mentioned the
Or
employee.
retroactively.
Yeah, I mean, employee retention credit. Well, that was in the CARES Act, enacted, I think it was March 27th, but the employee retention credit started March or after March 12th, right? So, I mean,
Yes.
Congress put something in place that, and then the IRS is left to, have to interpret that. And they were just, inundated. Plus, the IRS, they were, taking the same workplace protocols as everybody else. They weren't like, oh, we're all still in the office doing our normal stuff. So, I mean, they had
Yeah.
the challenges there, but then trying to offer their best interpretation of things that just weren't always clear cut because, Congress was also racing to get that done. But yeah, that does add
Mhm.
challenges. And of course, like you mentioned, employee retention credit. Yeah, a lot of practitioners and businesses hopefully are going back to check with their clients. Hey, now that things maybe have settled down, let's take a look. Maybe you were entitled to it. They also
Mhm.
might find that some people claimed that they learned with later guidance were not entitled to that credit. But that certainly
Yeah.
does put a lot of a lot of pressure on when there's so many changes and they're just not that clear cut and require, like you mentioned, employee retention credit. So many things to have to identify and measure to see if they're even qualified for it, and then actually get, okay, and what numbers go in here. And then, when they add new laws, they're just piled on top of existing laws. I always have to remind my students of this, and
Mhm.
even practitioners. I say, when we're talking about like new developments, a lot of presentations on updates in the law, remember, it's just piled on top of something else. You have to see how does it interact, because like the employee retention credit, when they renewed it and modified it at least two times later, they also changed how it interacted with other credits. In fact, what they even did was, for the first 6 months of 2021, it's going to, I could say this wrong, maybe it's backwards, but it was apply the employee retention credit first. And if the wages were used there, then they're not available to the research credit and various other credits. And then for the
Mhm.
last 6 months of the year, which then Congress changed to only the third quarter of 2021, um, you would instead calculate the other credits first and then use that. Well, how do you explain that to the client
Yeah.
without the client thinking, oh, no, you're making that up? That's just crazy. No,
Yeah.
that's actually what Congress wrote. And, so you got used to having to do how one credit interacts with another one. And then the next, third quarter of 2021, it's a different calculation there. So, you're setting up different spreadsheets, asking different questions.
Yep.
And that's just one example. I mean, there's just
Yeah.
lots of law changes, and a lot of them are fairly complicated. They might involve records that you wouldn't normally be keeping. It's
Would you
no doubt
say
a challenge.
Yeah, well, would you say, like, especially there's like on tax Twitter, there's a lot of solo practitioners. Like, how would you advise? How do we handle this? Because it's like, do we niche? Do we? Because it's so much to keep up on top of everything there else they're doing. Like, what do we just work 80 hours a week? What do we do? What do we
No,
do, Annette?
that is a great question. I know in talking to practitioners and doing updates, say, hey, this area here, like the employee retention credit, or when they, Code Section 199 Cap A, the qualified business income deduction was added. So
Hmm.
you're looking at those, like in the 199 Cap A deduction, there's over 100 pages of regulations. You would have to, hopefully, even if you had like 10 people in your firm, one person's going to just have to be the expert on that, because who would have the time to read all of those? And it's not just reading the regs, but you better go into the committee report. I think it's tough to be a solo practitioner unless you are going to
Yeah.
specialize. Oh, I'm going to specialize like in rental real estate. Don't come
Hmm.
asking me about employee retention credit or something. I'm just going to
Yeah. I'll
specialize
outsource
here,
that.
because it's not unusual to see, some very lengthy provisions added to the law, and then even lengthier regulations explaining that, with exceptions to exceptions, and sometimes exceptions to the exceptions to the exceptions,
Hmm.
definitions, things not being complete, IRS being just overwhelmed with having to get guidance out. And the law, I mean, it's been complicated for a long time. A very long time ago, when I first came to San Jose State, I went to the county law library. I was getting something, but I noticed on the shelves that they had some old journals there.
Uh-huh.
So I pull off a tax journal from, I think, like 1920. I said, what were they writing about 1920? And one of the
Yeah.
articles was about the growing complexity of the tax law, that it
Oh
kept on
no.
getting changed. And of course, compliance was a lot different, obviously, in 1920. But well, if they were writing about that in 1920, because there were mean, it's not unusual to see a lot of changes going on, but I think just the volume of the changes and the complexity of many of these provisions here
Yeah. So
is tough.
yeah, would you see them say then in the next 10 years you see it just getting worse, or do you think Congress will pull its head out of its you know what and maybe simplify things? What do you think's going to happen? What should we
I,
expect?
I know it sounds cynical. I don't think Congress really knows how to simplify, maybe don't want to simplify. Because, one way to
Mhm.
simplify would be, well, why do we have all these special rules?
Yeah, let's get rid of
That
them.
well, some of them, maybe the tax law is a good way to cover some things because
Exactly.
every more people pay taxes and vote.
Mhm.
So it's a way you can interact with folks. It might be an easy way to get certain subsidies out to folks that you want to get. For example, if Congress wants to continue to subsidize, mortgage interest deduction or something, yeah, the
Yeah.
tax law is going to be easier than writing all these people with a mortgage a check every month. But they probably should look at many of these things to say, do we need it here? Is it really even who is the target audience? And a lot of times when these special rules are put in place, it's doesn't go along with stating what is the goal. How will you measure if that goal is met? And I think that should be done. Just like if a company was going to say, "Hey, we're going to roll out this new product," they would not roll it out without having some way to test. Someone's responsible for gathering the data to see is this really going to be helpful, do some customer satisfaction. Yet
Mhm.
things continue to get added to the tax law, and there just aren't questions of, hey, is this doing what it's supposed to be doing? Like, many years ago, we have the American Opportunity Tax Credit that does provide up to $10,000 of tax credits, money in your pocket for 4 years
Yeah.
of college to most families or college students themselves. Is that achieving what we want it to achieve? I mean, data
Mhm.
out there would show, well, one thing it did cause college tuition to go up, thinking, oh, some that's going to get subsidized. That's just a natural
Yep.
reaction. Just like, oh, there's a credit for buying a hybrid car. Guess what? The hybrid car costs a
Yep.
bit more. When some of those credits have gone away, they've expired. Sometimes the car prices come down. It's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
Um, did it increase graduation rates? Did it provide
Mm.
whatever parts
Yeah.
of missing workforce without them? I mean, you continue to hear for the longest time, we don't have enough engineers out there. Well, is the American Opportunity Tax Credit helping to produce more engineers? We just, it doesn't get measured. But once
Yeah.
it gets into the tax law, it's there unless it has an expiration date. Whereas we also have Pell Grants, which have been around for a long time to help low income students better afford college. But every year, the Department of Education has to ask for the money for the Pell Grants, where the American Opportunity Tax Credit is just there. So, I mean, there's a whole other topic on tax policy, but
Yeah.
there should be some regular review of many of these provisions. And of course, if many of them went away, could lower tax rates, right? Or
Yeah.
do something else to provide better benefits. And some of those benefits don't benefit everybody. I mean, I think about
Yes.
65% of workers have employer provided health insurance, which is tax free to the employee. But what about the other 35% of employees? Why are they subsidizing that for the other workers when, health care and health insurance is otherwise so expensive? But those conversations just, aren't, I don't see them taking place. I think it's just easier to keep on
Yeah.
adding more provisions. And for the most part, the public has no idea what's
I know,
all
it's just they're
going on
literally
there.
it's like somebody's jugular was cut open and they just keep putting Band-Aids on top of it, hoping that that will if they put enough Band-Aids on top, hopefully, instead of
Yeah.
going in and actually stitching it up. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean,
I guess the one positive is if you are a tax practitioner, like, you have job security. Like, and I fully believe we're about to enter a recession. So that is, like
okay.
that's my one, like, shining hope during that. I'm like, well, worst case scenario, I just, my all my non-tax work falls off and I can just do more tax because we have tax clients coming out our ears.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much more to be done. And say even we talk about the CPA exam, but this is also something CPAs, AICPA's been pushing for some time. Of there's going to be growing, expanding need for people wanting more personal financial planning. So some of that
Mm-hmm.
actually got added to the CPA exam. But also
Oh,
back
that's
to your
great.
question, how does a solo practitioner
Yeah.
keep up? I think they need to probably at least have a network of other solo practitioners, and so they can
Mm-hmm.
bounce, some questions off of, because the tax law just gets more and more complicated,
Yeah.
which then
Okay.
adds
So
to the risk of, okay, did I tell my client everything? Did I
yes.
catch or did I get everything correct? It's tough.
Yeah, no, definitely. It adds there's a lot of anxiety in our industry because of that. Cause it's like, I think too, accountants maybe lean more on the side of being a perfectionist. Like they want to do their work and they want to do it right and they don't want to be sloppy about it. And when something does fall through the cracks, like I see people on tax Twitter really beat themselves up over it. And what I always try and say is like, we aren't ER surgeons. Like, no one died if something didn't get filed on time or there was some interest in penalties. Like, yes, your job's important, and yes, it's important to take it seriously. But like, don't do it at the expense of your health and your well being. You know?
Yeah. But then finding, what other solutions for helping with that, maybe,
Yes.
I need to work with another practitioner
Yes.
to help, just spread the knowledge workload that's out there.
Yes. Did you know that 52% of accounting practitioners, large and small, still rely on spreadsheets and manual processes for sales tax compliance? Why not move your accounting practice to the 21st century using Avalara for Accountants? The Avalara for Accountants automation platform helps accounting service providers of any size grow their service offerings with sales tax prep and filing, transfer pricing, research, business license management, and more. Scale your practice efficiently with award-winning automation that brings efficiency and accuracy to sales tax compliance. Want to learn more? Email accountants@avalara.com or visit avalara.com. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, we're kind of hit on the technical side. Let's go back to the technological side. So there was you referenced this in your PowerPoint, and when you were talking about like keeping up on regulations around technological and security, and you said the 2021-2022 changes to the Graham-Leach-Billy safeguards rule. What is that? What are
Well,
those?
I just thought out, as an example, because, there's just so much to keep up on. And you think, okay, am I keeping up on everything? And one I always like to ask folks is, well, think of just how much things change technologically so far as, like, okay, you installed this new wonderful firewall software and data security software. Is it still the best one today? Is it all kept up to date? Are there new problems out there that you're not solving? Are your fellow practitioners doing it a different way? I mean, how do you keep up with that? And I just note that there was a change in the Graham-Leach-Bliley law, dates back a long time ago. I can't remember now what year it was, but there was just a change. I think it was late last year, starting this year, on the safeguards rule, which all tax practitioners do have to follow. And it's basically just having some security plan in place to protect
Mhm.
the data.
Yeah.
Obviously, tax practitioners got a lot of very sensitive data that they need to be protecting. So it's just a few things on updating that. But just an example of how do you know you're keeping up to date on everything. So sometimes I just keep this growing list of questions to be asking to see, hey, are you missing something, or your client tells you they are, like years ago, people were hearing this perhaps, oh, I'm mining virtual currency. You probably, most people probably had no clue what they were talking about.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just an example of things you're going to hear your clients getting into, and like, okay, how do you keep up with it? And of course, you can also learn from your clients. Hopefully that if you did have the client mining virtual currency, ask them, and hopefully they were well aware of what they were actually doing. Sometimes the clients
That's a
aren't
bold
fully
that's a
up
bold
to speed.
assumption. That's a
Yeah.
bold assumption that they would know.
Because they may have gotten to something without having the full understanding of it as well. But every once in a while, you're going to find the client like, oh no, they're the expert in this, and I'm going to learn all that they're learning about this industry group that they've gotten themselves now into.
Yeah, I would say at least on the tax side of it, they are the exception, not the rule, like coming in and fully understanding the consequences of their actions. But okay, so this kind of leads me to so obviously there's rules around how us tax practitioners needs to guard client data, and there's tech that enables us to do that. There's this huge debate going on tax Twitter talking about client portals, and do clients like them, want them, need them, use them? Client portals being a place to exchange these sensitive documents. So what's that line in your opinion? Like, should the tech serve us more or should it serve the clients more when the end result's the same? Like either way, you're going to have security. So should you do it in a way that makes it easier on you as the firm, or should you do it in a way that makes it easier on the client? And this applies to a lot more than just the client portal.
Well, obviously, you need to keep your client happy and well served, and to present them with some technology they're not going to use obviously doesn't serve the purpose. So it's not just a technology, but it's, what can you do to help the client understand the importance of that and
Mm-hmm.
help them to be able to use it? Is it walking them through it,
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one? Is it creating a video for them? Is it finding a different comparable one that maybe is a little bit more user friendly? But certainly, we always would want to be thinking about, okay, this is some great technology I've just saw. I'm at some conference and there's vendor conference going on and someone's telling about this great software. Certainly thinking about, is this going to really serve my clients well? But I think a lot of it is going to be for security. Particularly, you've just got to get
Mm-hmm.
your clients to be doing this. I do hear from practitioners saying, oh yeah, my client emailed me the sensitive document. Even though I got a secure portal, they could have uploaded it to, but really stressing to the client. And when I come across examples of where something did go wrong, it's like, great, that's a great one to share with your clients, right? Because then they'll see,
Yeah.
yes,
Scare them into
some things can
compliance.
go wrong, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned this on the last podcast I did, but I read this book by this restaurateur who has all these like Michelin restaurants, and he talks about how he tries to go on the offense instead of the defense. So tying it into this, I see it as like, you have a client portal or you're rolling out a client portal. It's like, figure out all the ways that number one, clients can mess this up and proactively solve for that. I don't know how to log in. I can't find what just boom, 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 boom. List out the 20, 30, 40 different ways that they're going to mess up your systems and process, and proactively help them not do that. So you're not reacting on the defense, trying to solve, in the minute and getting frustrated with all these emails, but you've proactively already solved that, sending them the help article, helping
Right,
them do it how they need to. So I
right.
think
Always,
that,
yeah. Want to be
yeah,
proactive rather than reactive. And yeah, if you get a test client or family member that, is willing to, be the test person, then you can see, what kind of questions that people really, really
yes.
have.
Yeah, I think we have, like, especially when we're in the tech all the time, and I can jump into almost any tech program and figure out pretty quickly how to navigate around it. But like, I forget not everyone can do that, especially the older generations who did not grow up 24/7 in front of the computer like I did.
Okay, now don't insult the older generation. I often find sometimes that I can do many things sometimes that my students don't know what I'm talking about. So it all depends on what effort you've put in to stay
Yeah, it
out there. And I
does.
think we find, some young people might just be tech dependent, not always tech savvy. I think that takes a few more
Hmm.
steps to really, where they want to get into understanding it. They're watching, a YouTube video. How do you really do this? Or you run across people, oh, I created my own NFT. Well, great, good for you, right? You actually learned and went in and did that, but that wouldn't be everybody. So I think certainly, I think being tech dependent, having grown up where the internet was there the whole time, it's just what you're used to. But I think you'll find across generations that there are a lot of tech savvy in all of them.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so we talked a lot about like this constant need for learning, adapting, and to do that, obviously, we have to move out of our comfort zone. And again, accountants, very conservative, don't like change necessarily. How do we do that?
Well, I think a willingness, and I think understanding why we need to do that. And that's not really new. We've always go out of our comfort zone. If
Hmm.
obviously CPAs went to college, going to college is getting out of your comfort zone.
Uh-huh.
Moving away from home, perhaps, or getting your first, real job. So we've obviously got lots of practice moving out of our comfort zone. But I preface that with, just that our environment today, I think just even more so than when I was dealing with in practice or even dealing with in teaching, years ago when there wasn't as much technology. It's like, okay, I need to get a textbook and I put together lessons, I create a syllabus, I make copies of it on the copy machine. Well, obviously it's all done uh, differently. Plus there's a lot of great technology for really aiding in the teaching and learning process. So we, really need to be staying relevant and growing. I think this is certainly important for practitioners so far as making sure you continue to have new clients coming in that might be in new industries you're not familiar with. Well, how do you get familiar with
Mhm.
those? So many things to do to help stay up to date. And I think something you might need to leave your comfort zone, even thinking about, well, where would I go? I mean, if you're someone that like my professional career, often going to a conference, that was a way we networked with our fellow practitioners and got our continuing education.
Mhm.
But a lot of that's moved virtual. A lot of things that maybe we need to know aren't being covered at the traditional type of conference.
Yeah.
Some of the things I would suggest folks do is, for example, look at events at your nearby convention center,
Mhm.
because I think learning from what kind of conventions, and maybe I think we're back to seeing actually conventions going on at these centers. And if
Yeah.
you're some kind of a trade show or tech show and you're like, gee, I don't even know what that is. Well, maybe you want to learn what it is, and maybe you want to go to that conference.
Yeah.
Uh, on social media, maybe it's connecting with some group on LinkedIn just to learn more about what they're posting. And if you want to get more about virtual currency, as various organizations, whether they are like journalists or their industry associations or just individuals who are very active in that area, maybe following them, and you can pick up a fair amount. I think
Mhm.
one I really push young people and maybe all practitioners is go online and even just look up meetups. How I got probably involved in virtual currency is when I first heard about it, I was kind of intrigued by it. And then I'm out looking at some conference site for a conference we were putting on. And I
Yeah.
saw these flyers. It was at an incubator, but they
Uh-huh.
had a
Yeah.
sign up there that there was the Bitcoin meetup met
Oh,
weekly.
wow.
So I went to the Bitcoin meetup.
Oh, wow.
But that's where I met people doing all kinds of stuff in the virtual currency space. There were people
Yeah.
starting businesses. There were people that, really had a really good handle on what it was. This was like 2013 that I
Yeah.
started going. But that kind of activity, this look for those, I think you'll find them interesting. It's where you're going to just see, well, what are people doing? Been to a couple of blockchain conferences, and just to see and talking to people as what kind of businesses they're forming,
Mhm.
quite fascinating. But again,
Yeah.
not the common thing we're going to do is maybe you get out of your comfort zone to have to go look these up. Oh, I just wait for my state CPA society to tell me what conferences are going on, and they probably are addressing some of these items. But
Mhm.
I'd say looking broadly, because there's just more kinds of activities going on. um, I think also making sure you're talking to folks that from all different generations, talking to people that haven't had your same experiences and
Yeah.
don't maybe look like you in many ways. I think another way to kind of see what's going on, what kind of new college degrees are being offered out there, what
Oh,
courses are
that's an
new,
interesting
because I
one.
think
I
you're
never thought
find
of
a
that.
growing number of classes on blockchain, and certainly data analytics is a big deal. What kind of new companies are in the news? You hear some
Mhm.
name of a company, you don't even know what they're doing, and what is that they're describing? Go look into it. And I think when we then kind of get out of our comfort zone, and maybe how can you do this? Well, identify what you want that is outside your comfort zone.
Mhm.
Why should you leave, and why would you want to go for this new goal? Is it something that, gee, I think there's business opportunity there, or gee, I want to just sound more tech savvy, and maybe make sure I'm asking my clients the right questions about like their virtual currency or their
Mhm.
whatever kinds of activities they might be involved in various technology. I think maybe identify, gee, I've maybe fallen into some routines that might be holding
Yep.
me back. I'm just keep on doing the same thing. Maybe
Oh,
it's time to try
guilty.
something new. We
Yeah.
all do that, right? It's just
Yeah.
easy.
It's
Um,
evolution. Like our body, that's what our brain wants. Our brain wants predictability and
yeah,
stability.
right. That's right. Yeah, go someplace you don't normally go, meet someone new, someone outside your usual circle of friends or colleagues. And
Mhm.
certainly social media is a way you might find, oh, gee, I keep on seeing this CPA pop up on LinkedIn and they're posting some interesting things. And gee, maybe I'll reach out to them. Of course, if they're nearby, maybe today even meet them for coffee or something, or just connect with them on on LinkedIn. Join a group. if that's something appropriate. Read a book or article you would not normally read. I
Ooh,
think
yeah.
I think it's always good to go to a bookstore that has a magazine rack, and they are still out there. There are ones that magazine racks, and just scan the magazines to see,
Mhm.
wow, there's some things I've just never heard of. Maybe they're relevant, and if it's talking about some new product or practice, well, it's probably some business running it, and
Yeah.
they all need a CPA. So being aware of that, and I think also being engaged in creative activities is
Mhm.
good, because that, I think, helps us push outside our comfort zone. Gee, we want to learn how we can do this particular activity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so oh,
yeah,
go
I had
ahead,
some
sorry.
suggestions that I do a fair amount of presentations and writing on virtual currency,
Uh-huh.
and then always as people, they're like, I don't know anything about it at all, and others who are like, oh no, I got clients, I'm off on some advanced topic or something. But for something like that, there's many things you can do. I say, see if there's some kind of a group or meetup, and it might be in person, might be online. Look for books or websites that seem to be reliable on that. On social media, just go on LinkedIn and search on virtual currency, see who comes up and what they're posting. And if there's someone who's regularly speaking at some major conference, they obviously might be an expert on that. Find out how these things work. For example, when there's a virtual currency, a new one, or some kind of a token, almost always there's a white paper connected with it. Well, knowing that,
Mm.
you can go read the white paper to learn more about that. There are a variety of podcasts out there on all kinds of topics, and that can be a great way, test some of those out. I listen to them while I go run, and some of them are terrific. Keep on listening to them. Others like, oh, okay, I'm done with that one. Um, See what kind of newsletters might be out there that would give you some help. Then in the Bitcoin and crypto space, there's all kinds of conferences that go on,
Mhm.
like Consensus and Bitcoin 2022, to name others. There might be some courses. Actually,
Mhm.
in the process of taking one
Oh, yeah.
on edX, was getting into the technical aspects of the Bitcoin and virtual currency, which is, when you get into the cryptography and the details of the software and all that, it is fairly complicated. I'm never going to be an expert on that. That's not my background, but at least I want to get a sense of some of the um, terminology and all that, to help see that helps me better identify some tax answers or tax issues as well. But I think it's just, in talking to other folks, making sure, oh, every year I go to this one conference, which is great, but
Yeah.
maybe there's a new conference, or maybe when you fill out that evaluation, you put down, oh, I'd like to learn about, the latest in the decentralized finance space. Maybe you add that to this conference next year. Yeah, so sometimes we get into routines, or we're just so busy. Okay, how can I add one more thing? Well, maybe sometimes to add one more thing, you've got to knock something else off of your plate.
Mhm. Yeah. So in college, my coach used to tell us, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And at the time, I interpret that as, okay, I am always going to be stressed out. Like this is just my new comfort is being uncomfortable. But now that I'm older, how I've reframed that is not just to live in this constant state of discomfort, but to redefine what comfort means for me. So, in this sense, meaning, I think a lot of the reason people don't want to go outside their comfort zone is their fear of being seen as, dumb, being a beginner again. But if you to redefine your comfort zone to mean, I'm comfortable being a beginner, it's not something that's going to cause me anxiety. And like one thing I heard over and over again, you're talking about going out and exploring is like curiosity. So it's like, in my comfort zone, I am curious. So when I do things to learn and explore that, that's just normal for me because that's something I've defined as being comfortable to me, because of X, Y, or Z reason. So I think that's what I'm hearing is it's like, because I mean, I'm sure there was one point early in your career where going out and learning those things and getting in new situations probably was not necessarily super fun, or it was probably a little awkward, you probably didn't
Or
know
scary.
people. Yeah, but it's like the more you did it and it became part of your identity, you going out and doing those things, then it becomes comfortable. And so it's like I think just that's so important, it's just switching the mindset. It's like I'm not a social person. Like yes, you can be. like redefine who you are, your identity, because it is scary sometimes going and showing up at a place where absolutely no one.
And good chance, that if you go into some conference, like I went to this one bit blockchain finance one several years ago, and I mean, yeah, some people knew each other, but there was a lot of people there just, seeing what was going on, and chatted with some folks. There were some CPAs there,
Yes.
so that
Yes.
put me in
Okay.
my comfort zone. But I think just watching, if you want to be saying, well, gee, my clients might be going into this space, whether as investment or business activities and some kind of
Mhm.
new technology, or I am interested in it so far as I'd like to maybe be serving clients in that space. Or, occasionally even find some folks where their practice went completely to, they're just serving people involved with cryptocurrency. There's just so
Mhm.
much going on there. So you never know, maybe, there's something that might even just completely change what you thought you were going to be doing. But
Yes.
uh, I think we also have, versus what we had, before the mid '90s, so much more on social media where you can pick up or join some kind of a group and see what kind of links come in there. I always have, like, on Google, I've always got some track. It's tracking news for me. Not everybody
Oh,
knows.
yes.
That's another thing. Go and find out how browsers work. I always have my students have to do that as part of information literacy, because I said, if you think all that search engine can do is you type in a word, there's far more you can do with all of these. That's going to be a more refined search, more information that can come about to really work on all that. But one of them is they'll track news for you, give them words that you want to be following, and a
And then
whole
it'll
host
ping
of
up.
things come back. I mean, I haven't
Oh, that's a
searched on
good tip. I
Bitcoin,
didn't
a
know.
few others, but again, that's just exploring things, talking to folks, and maybe it's sometimes when you're, instead of asking colleague you haven't seen in a while, hey, uh, what's new? Did you go on a vacation? But hey, have you tried any new technology, or
Mm,
any interesting podcasts you've discovered
yeah.
lately, or anybody you're following on social media that sounds like, wow, I just always get a lot of interesting, whether tax interpretations, or something going on in the crypto digital asset space, or with the
Mhm.
gig economy, or whatever it is you might be interested in. So take advantage of things you're already doing, just asking more questions. In your family, if you got multiple generations, make sure you're asking all of them what it is
Yes.
they're what kind of games are you playing online, who are you tracking on social media, and if you don't
Mhm.
know what they're talking about, ask, let them show you, because it just can lead to more things.
Yeah. Okay. So then, kind of to like wrap this up, let's say you only had three options for keeping relevant and current on things, and we'll say like in the online world because that's where everyone's. What would be your three go-to websites, whether it's for community information, any? What would be your three must-haves that you'd have to have?
Well, I guess something I'd want Google or whatever search engine I'm using, and that I would understand, what all can it really do for
Mhm.
me? Because I think we're not using the full capability of all of those.
Yeah.
Making sure I am learning from, like, new students coming in every year, that I'm
Mhm.
really learning from them. What do they do? How do they study? What kind of tools and resources might they be aware of? What are they interested in? Because I've got this benefit of seeing a bunch of folks in their 20s and 30s. That population changes for me every year,
Yeah.
and I'd say just being open to looking for new sources of information. Search on podcasts, just like, gee, I'm not sure what that is, or searching. I love this one about what's going on at your convention center, because there's so many things going on. Especially, I think now that we're maybe
Mhm.
coming back to actually having these things
Yeah.
in person, but just being open to finding, where can I learn something that I never heard of before. Now, how deeply you want to dive into it, that's up to you. But
Mhm.
occasionally you're going to find, oh, well, that's an interesting source of technology, or wow, they got a whole nother angle on how security works. I think I want to learn about this, so I'm ready for this next type of software coming out there, and I'll be ready with this practice, or make sure I'm asking the right questions of my providers and of my clients, perhaps. So yeah, I think
Hmm.
good search engine that you really making the most of. Making good use of populations around you, just asking questions of folks, whether family members or if you're hiring folks, make sure you really get to know these people. What is it? Because we probably don't ask, well, what kind of social media are you tracking? Now they might not want to tell you everything, but they might tell you something of interest. And then just making the time to just see what is going on even in your local area,
Hmm.
that you might want to get involved, whether it's a meetup, something going on at the convention center, a conference.
Yeah, I'm going to start doing that. Absolutely. Because I live like 10 minutes away from our convention center in Portland. And I never thought to, I just like, oh, there's no accounting events in Portland. And that was like, I'm like, there's nothing else I would ever be interested in. Like I was very finite thinking.
There could be some interesting tech shows. They probably have a car show
Yes.
every once in a while. You could go see the
Yeah.
new model cars.
Yes. No, they definitely do. And so, all right. Okay. So to wrap this up, we're going to play a really quick game called This or That. So I'm going to give you two options. You got to tell me this or that. Okay. This one is like a hot topic where people are arguing on text Twitter all the time. Move the filing date or keep it the same?
I would say get rid of the filing date.
I
And
like that
I have
one.
written about that with technology. But that's reframing that question. That the tax law 1913, you were filling out pieces of paper, though most people aren't. 1913,
Yeah.
only a few high income folks were subject to the income tax. But today, I mean, like if you order something online, like from Amazon, they're not having you fill out a form and then you send it off this PDF to them. You're just clicking on stuff. Yet,
Hmm.
even though you might be e-filing and of course, most people are using software, you are still filling out a form. Why
Hmm.
can't we take all this digital data we have, like my paycheck, it's automatically deposited into my bank account. So there's a digital
Yeah.
file there. But at the end of the year, I'm going to get a W-2, which I will then type into the software. That's crazy. All this digital data, in fact, even if you have a Schedule C, if you set it up well enough, and obviously Avalara knows how to do all this,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
software has all this data.
Yeah.
It should just, I think individuals get all your data as possible digitized. If you set up your, whatever software you're using to track like your Schedule C business, if you set it up right, it could feed into this.
Yeah.
It would feed into what I call your tax cloud. Then you identify what software tool you want to grab that, and it can be done on a daily basis of, gee, have I paid enough income tax yet?
Yeah.
So I think we need to move away from the long-standing stuff that's really kind of outdated. Yes, we do need dates for statute of limitations and actually uh, closing years,
Years.
but I
Yeah.
think a lot of this we need to make better use of technology, which already exists. The IRS obviously has not been
Yeah.
well funded to be able to move into having the same kind of technology that Amazon and very effective companies operate with. If they did, it would look a lot differently.
Yeah.
Gen Z, I do not believe, goes out to the mailbox to get their W-2 out of the mailbox, and they don't need to. But I
Yeah.
think maybe Gen Z will be the ones to push. Who invented this filing system? It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I feel too like not that I know a lot about the blockchain, but I feel like the blockchain could solve this.
Yeah,
Like,
that type of technology as far as tracking. It's a lot of things it could do. Working at a university. Oh, if you're applying, get all these transcripts off. No, that should just be kept on some
yeah.
ledger. You give someone a code, they
Hmm.
go and they can easily verify that, or it just feeds into whatever you need. But I think tax filing, we need to really move towards it. Is more of a kind of a just in time
Yeah. I
type
feel like
system.
I'm hoping in the next 10 to 15 years as Congress turns over and hopefully we get some younger legislatures, in there passing laws. Hopefully they will see the need for that and will do so accordingly. But
Yeah, and I
I
think
mean,
Gen Z will push that as well.
mhm.
I think a lot of types of changes. 'Cause I think if we just think about what's showing up in your physical mailbox and why, because far
Mhm.
less is showing up. I mean, I think most people with credit
It's
cards
junk
probably
mail.
aren't waiting for. I mean, in
Yeah.
fact, they're all telling you the bank credit card company, I don't want to send you this
Yes, please
paper
stop sending
anymore.
me
But we're
paper.
still. But I think Gen Z, they're wondering why. What do you mean I had to go get a piece of paper out of the mailbox and did my tax return.
That you printed off a computer, and then I have to hand type it back into a
Right.
computer.
Well, I find I think most of the college students, they don't even own a printer, even though they don't cost very
I
much.
don't have
They have no
one.
need. They have no
Yeah.
need for one.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have one. I'm like, no. People are like, why don't you get one? I'm like, scan your own stuff. I'm not scanning it for you. Like, I'm not doing that. So awesome. Well, Annette, thank you so much for joining me today. And this was a really great conversation, and I want to say I'm cliche, but more applicable than ever. It really is, with the speed of technical and technological information. So where is the best place for people to connect with you if they want to learn more or, collaborate? How should they find you?
Okay. Well, Lauren, it's great chatting with you. And I think it's one of my favorite topics of, staying current, staying relevant. What does that mean today? You can just Google me. You will quickly find me. I've got at the university, I've got a very extensive webpage. And I keep a lot of things online. It's all the things you just never know when you go out exploring. Since 2011, for example, I have web pages where I actually have a list of all of the Treasury regulations issued for the year with a link, a brief explanation.
Oh, my word.
As well as things that were revenue rulings, procedures, and notices. Some other web pages as well. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Twitter, where I do try to mostly posting tax things, mostly related things to tax policy. I think one role I can play is raising some of the policy type questions that I know practitioners don't always have time to really delve into, because you've got to get the numbers on the returns and planning information out to your clients. But you can certainly find me on the social media and web search.
Awesome. And then everyone knows where to find me. I'll be on Twitter at Laurelyn Wilson. You can DM me. DMs are open. You can tweet at me. I'm just on there being a general menace. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time.
Great. Thank you.